of all, since we're in Oslo, you're going to be speaking at the Freedom Forum. Can you give us a little take? I mean, what are you going to be focusing on? There's so much to talk about, and Davos is happening just across the way.
Yeah, I tweeted about that. Two totally different forums, but actually connected. I would say that there's people here that don't understand how big monetary policy is an influence for the things that they're talking about. And I would say in Davos, many of the attendees don't realize the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So what's your talk about?
Here,
yeah.
The growth of Bitcoin and how it can be used, and what's going to change kind of as a result of the growth of Bitcoin, how it flips all of our models completely on a 180, and what that means for where humanity goes. Well, kind of a big topic.
Oh, yeah, no big deal. Well, right now, I think a lot of people are feeling the bearishness around us, right? The prices dipped, could go lower. And I was just kind of curious, what's your take on the volatility right now and the greater macroeconomic picture of just the Fed tightening and everything starting to unwind a bit?
So if you think this through, so people, even on a book, asked, okay, well, why aren't we seeing deflation, right? There's one reason we're not seeing deflation, and it's called a money printer. Because you have to ask yourself, what would the market look like without manipulation? And what you'd see in any market, every single market would be, the entire market sits on top of credit, which must grow forever, exponentially grow forever to match the offset of technology. And any sort of collapse in that credit means recession, then depression. And don't think people are actually giving enough credence to what's actually happening right now. At the front lines, I'm on 7 different boards. On the front lines of those boards, job losses are about to accelerate in a big, big way. And those job losses, all of those people have mortgages. The entire world is intertwined in a credit bubble. And if you remove credit, so a tightening policy which removes credit, the credit rolls over and defaults. And people can't pay back their mortgages, and it just unwinds. And people believe that they have money in the bank, when it's really credit in the bank. So if you let that go, every bank would fail, every institution would fail, global trade would stop. And as that counterparty risk accelerated and unwound the entire system. That is unfortunately the system we live in today. And there aren't a lot of choices out of that. Door number 1 is tighten, right? And have everything reset. But can you imagine what life would look like in everything resets? You'd go back to barter, right? You'd go back to Bitcoin would be a really good store of value in that, because at least there's 140 million people in the world you could trade with. Because people think they would have money in that system because the bank would be safe. The bank wouldn't be safe. The only money they would have is the money under the mattress. And if you think about what humans would do in that environment when they can't eat and what they can't, they would elect anybody who said they would change all the rules. Dictators would rush in and fill that void. So that's door number 1, and you could assume that's not going to happen, right? At some point, that means the Fed has to ease, but the Fed easing is actually the entire world, right? Because it's not just the U.S., it's an entire interconnected world that if it unwinds all over the world. So then what does easing look like, and when does that happen? And another mistake people make is they think the Fed is independent, or it is independent right now, but in scenario 1, what would happen? Essentially, in scenario 1, the Treasury would overtake the Fed, and it would essentially give out free money, and you'd be printing into inflation, and at some point you'd cause hyperinflation, and that's door number 2. And those are the only 2 scenarios out of our existing mess right now. So when people talk about Bitcoin price, I kind of go, what are you talking about? Because it actually doesn't matter the price. It's a new network that's being built alongside, and it's going to overtake. It's a bridge to the other side. And I sure wouldn't want to be pricing that bridge with dollars that have to be destroyed one way or the other in the system. So I just think about all the when price comes down, I buy more, but that whole setup has some pretty staggering consequences, and it means kind of if you looked at risk on a scenario, kind of a barbell strategy, you'd probably want some cash if the U.S. is tightening, because that cash will buy more.
Yep.
But at some point, they're going to have to print a lot of money, and they will wipe out your cash. And then consequently, on the other side of the risk spectrum, if you're kind of all levered and they tighten, you'll be wiped out. So I think right now, with what's going to happen, forget about the greater and greater polarization of the world because of that. You're going to see a lot of greater and greater instability in the world, all over the place, and things could come out of left field and change things really quickly.
So what do you think it will be that will prompt the printing again? Because I feel like what I hear from folks like Lynn Alden is something in the system has to quote unquote break, right? But like you mentioned, we're globalized now. Things are happening in Japan, things are happening in Europe. What is it that you think will quote unquote break in order for them to initiate into inflation more money printing?
Things are breaking right now. So if you think about Russia essentially saying, my oil is worth more than your printed money, that's breaking. And energy is now being used as a weapon because for a long time, U.S. could print energy and everybody else had to pay for energy.
Yeah.
That is breaking down right now, and commodities are breaking down as well. But this is interconnected. It could be China, it could be Japan, it could be in the U.S. as this rolls over in the U.S. Just imagine. So I think the number is 22% right now. The S&P can't pay the interest on their loans. So they're zombie companies, and that's the old interest rate. And as that rolls over, the credit markets are seized right now. High yield debt is going crazy, and as that rolls over, that means they won't be able to pay anything, and that credit will reset. If that credit resets and all of those employees are gone, or the business goes into bankruptcy and all of those employees are shed into the economy, that's a lot of joblessness.
Right.
And as those people kind of, that feedback mechanism, it could just come from the U.S. alone. So I suspect something is going to break in the next 3 months.
3 months.